posterity. All right, thank you for those smiles. It helps me realize that my corny jokes do work with some people, and the other people just laugh at me. That's fine. I'm okay with that. All right, so we're going to start off with a poll. I really do appreciate what you have offered there, because our group, and since we're kind of in charge of this kind of thing, is always have our ears open and our eyes open. We know that we're in a relatively strange environment. Even before we hit COVID, we had to, we were looking at alternatives, because how important it is for us as what we are now calling ourselves a virtual campus and online learning. We need to make sure that one of the things we really can't do is require our students in online learning to come to campus to take an exam. So we really want to have legitimate tools that can monitor the assessments that we're doing with our students. Now, this is, of course, one way of assessing our students' work, right, Mike? You know, we don't have to have tests. We don't have to have proctored tests, but if we have other mechanisms by which the students are, providing and submitting stuff to you, it can be assessed, and we can find ways to help us determine the, I'll use the word legitimacy of their assessments, the authenticity of their work, and in some cases, some verification of that. And we have a number of ways to do that. And if any of you have attended some of our training sessions, you know that we talk about verification and integrity. And there's a sort of a palette of tools that we provide to faculty to offer up how you might go about establishing those criteria in your course. You can use Flipgrid, you can use Safe Assign inside of Blackboard. You can just do, like Dana has done, Zoom monitoring during exams or even during a course. Even just using Blackboard Collaborate for a synchronous session, making sure that your students have their camera on from time to time is a certain way of validating those students, correct? So this is just one of the tools in our box to help us try to ensure that there's some type of integrity in the assessments that we're giving to our students, both from the perspective of what you're putting out there. You want to make sure that your test doesn't get out in test web land, right? That's important, especially for people like Lucy, and the nursing program is so very tight on making sure that the tests that we use inside our walls, whether they be cloud walls or physical walls, don't leave those walls, because a lot of those tests actually are the framework for the students taking tests where their accreditation is involved. So we're particular about making sure that our exams don't get out there for everyone to see, and two, making sure that the students, when they're taking those exams, are doing so in the most honest way possible, and applying the principles of our academic integrity policy that we do have at the institution. So I don't want to be too wordy about this. I want to get to some particulars, but one thing I want to say right from the get-go, this is nothing but a tool. It's a mechanism. It provides some sense of, one, letting the students know that we are being aware and trying to keep them, in the framework of doing honest work. And two, that it doesn't provide every element that we need to always make a final decision whether there is some violation or there's not, okay? Similar to, you have a lock on your door, I apologize for that. And that lock is one mechanism to try to keep your house safe, but it doesn't necessarily deter a burglar from coming in. So there are always ways to either circumvent by a student, not expecting that to happen too often. We have seen that in other scenarios. And there's ways to not to be sure that maybe the lock fails, okay? And you get false positives like that you always have to analyze and as part of the process. So I just wanted to put that out there right from the get-go. And I'm going to throw I shouldn't say it that way. I'm going to put up a poll. I was going to say throw up. Hold on a second. I'm logged in from an. Oh, Miss Hannigan has just. Miss Hannigan has come on, and she's just thwarted my ability to put up a poll.
Hang on.
Oh, that's funny because I'm actually using her account.
Oh, okay.
I'm co-host.
You're the host.
All right, let's see if I try it again. It says, I'm logged in from another device, so the polling session is inactive. Can you pull up the poll, Sandy?
Let's see.
It's Proctorio.
I am sorry. I can't.
Proctor testing. You can't.
Nope.
Do you mind just jumping off for a second?
I will. Bye.
Logging off of the account, and I'll see what happens.
Yep.
Yeah, this is crazy, huh? She's Zoom bombing anyway. She wasn't supposed to be here. No, just kidding. All right, let's try it again. Hitting polls. All right. I think maybe what I'm going to have to do is log back in. Hopefully this won't take too long. Let's make sure I am logged in.
I had to do that before.
Did you?
Yeah, because I couldn't hear anything all of a sudden.
Oh, that was me, I think, Mike. I heard.
Is that what happened?
You did go off. Yeah, that was me probably.
No big deal.
Get this there. I'm signing out. And let's sign back in. Boom, boom. All right, come on now. Let's make this work. I did that. I might have to sign in a different way. But here we go. Polls. Oh my God. All right, let's do it down here. Talk amongst yourselves.
Oh, you have to write the question into settings. Take your time.
Okay, here it comes. All right, hopefully this will do it. You son of a gun. All right, last but not least, I'm going to go back and come back in. Give me a second. Son of a gun.
Take your time.
If I can do that, I'm going to leave the meeting. And for now, I'm going to assign Elaine the host. Fortunately, that doesn't take too long. I'm back. Let me see if I can do it now. Can you hear me, guys?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Quick rename. There we go. Polls. Yay! All right, here it comes. I'm launching. And it's got a lot of possibilities in it, so read it carefully. All right, why is some form of proctored testing important to you or not? Students should know that Big Brother is watching. We need legitimate testing for our discipline. We need to accommodate our policies. My dean says so. Others are doing it, so I guess I should. It's not that important, and I have my other ways of dealing with these students. All right. Anybody need more time? We're at 55 seconds. I'm going to end the polling. All right. And share the results so you can see. All right. So by default, obviously the legitimacy of good testing for our discipline seems to be predominant here. And I think that I was being somewhat facetious about the first option in Big Brother, but I think we do want to have some sort of sense that, just to keep the students honest, even those people that would even have that inkling that they might want to cheat, they probably won't just because they are watching. Is that the reason that some people applied that one, or did they do like the concept of Big Brother? Because one thing that and feel free to share, one thing that has been said about this tool is, some people feel that it really is somewhat of an invasion of privacy.
I'm just looking to keep the law abiding, Joe.
I can imagine you would want that, Vertel. Sorry, I forgot to put my video back on. All right. And anybody want to explain their other answers? That's what I was hoping for.
Joe, I'll chime in on that. We use it because it is OSHA and DTE. They require us to capture IDs, which is really what we use it for check-in purposes, along with testing. But it is required by us to have monitoring of students and checking of IDs because that's their protocol. So that's really why we use it.
Okay, so are checking IDs and monitoring the testing both important and equally important to you?
I would say yes.
Okay, equally important.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, Heather's right. Yeah, the testing that we do for OSHA, you know, one of the things is making sure that it can't get out there. I think, as you said, in the test web. So we have to protect the test, and that's required by OSHA. And yeah, they require us to have some way of proctoring the students that are taking the test.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate that. Anybody else have an other reason, or were the two of you with the others there? All right. Okay. So let me share my screen with you, please. And I'll bring up a small Padlet. If any of you are familiar with Padlet, it's just a web-based utility out there to allow you to throw sticky notes on a wall. It's kind of like a wiki where you could just put posts in, and I like to use it sometimes for these web shops to give me a sort of a sense of, number one, how I want to go through some information, but number two, it becomes, I think, a utilitarian resource to you, the attendees, for now until eternity, because we keep these Padlets up there. So if you want to ever use this, I'll send a link to you. Matter of fact, right now I'm going to pop it up and put it in the chat for you. Okay, get the chat up. Second. And I've just posted it there. Okay. Bring up the participant list again too. All right, and feel free to stop me during the session at all if you want to. We do this pretty informally. You got anything to say, open up your mic or throw something in the chat box. Okay, thanks. All right, so a little bit about Proctorio over here on the left-hand side. These little columns, they roll up and down. You can read some of this. I don't want to go through this verbatim because I want to get into actual nuts and bolts, but this was meant to be a replacement predominantly to the Respondus tool that we were using for many years. We recently started using the added tool called Monitor on top of Respondus Lockdown Browser, which allowed the webcam basic watching the students, having it recorded. And then if you needed to, you could play back that recording with Respondus. So Proctorio does very, very much similar activity to Respondus Lockdown Browser and Monitor, maybe a little bit more actually. There's a lot of bells and whistles that I call it the a la carte smorgasbord that Proctorio applies or allows you to choose what you want on, what you want off, a lot more than Respondus ever did. So that said, just be sure that any of you that have used Respondus before or tell your faculty that you're affiliated with, make sure that they do at this point in time, eliminate any artifacts they might have in their course about Respondus Lockdown Browser. We don't want to confuse the students. That could have been something we talked about in our areas of study yesterday too, less confusion, probably better for their connection with and their success in the courses. So if you need any help with that, please contact us at NCC EdTech. We'd be happy to help you with that. So let's jump right into what are some of the requirements for Proctorio? And here's a nice little document. Actually, it takes you to a website. So Proctorio has their own variety of web pages out there. And if we can look at the system requirements, we can read, but we're not going to get too much into that. And you can see The one thing that is really good about Proctorio compared to Respondus is that that last column, it's working with Chromebooks. That was one of the big things, especially when we went in COVID mode. We were having a problem with those folks that had Chromebooks out there and they couldn't use Respondus Lockdown Browser. That may change in the future, but for now, that one of the main reasons why we chose Proctorio. Some of these settings that you see here or requirements are not very rigid. Like you can see the amount of RAM, for instance, that's indicated here. We see most people that are testing that don't have that level of RAM available to them when they take a test, but they test successfully. The Proctorio tool works successfully. So this is more or less a guideline than anything else, I think, okay? So those are just some of the things that you just need to be aware of, and so will your students. And you're welcome to give them this information as well. I wouldn't suggest that you relay this entire Padlet to your students. Just pull out certain things that you might need from here and put them in your course if necessary. Okay, any question about system requirements? All right, pretty easy. Let's go back here. Just close that. Sorry about that. I think I just actually closed it. Here we go. Maybe there's something wrong with my internet today. Things are working a little bit slowly. All right, so we finished the About Proctorio, and our intention is to continue using Proctorio for the spring, just so you are aware of that. We wouldn't be probably talking about it today if we weren't. The committee for OL, the Online Learning Advisory Committee, we call OLAC, is looking at other alternatives for the future, the distant future. So who knows, we'll see what happens. But basically right here, you can watch this short intro here about Proctorio. I don't want to bore you with that. You can do that on your own time. This faculty startup guide, we hope, would be a good reference tool for you so that you can kind of go through. It's very detailed, and I can't remember, this one is 10 pages, yeah. So it talks about all the elements of basically going through, including the actual gradebook element, which is what you're going to see on the backside after your students have taken an exam. And it allows you to review and evaluate the integrity of each person's exam, right? But it talks about all the different metrics, et cetera, through this, and even gives you some discrete information about what the students will see, what you see in the gradebook when you look at it, and things like that. So that is a reference tool that's here for you as well. All right, let's pop back. And I can't remember, that was the last thing here. But I think this will be, this category, third column, most important to you. If needed, we did some training sessions with Proctorio directly, and that's what you could see right here in August. And then we conducted another week of training sessions before fall semester began, and we recorded them. So these are two of those recorded sessions. They're each about an hour long, but of course, if you want to, you can skim through them, and they were done through Zoom. So this information is here for you right in the Padlet to access as well. Now, this is sort of a work in progress, all right? What we've learned, and Steve, Lucy, anybody else that has actually used Proctorio a little bit, probably is somewhat aware of some idiosyncrasies and ways to ensure that things do work well. Now, this is a little bit of that. There's probably a few more rules of thumb that I'll try to share with you during the session, but hopefully this will be a good guideline for you. And one of the most important things that I want to talk about is right here, number 6. Do make sure you provide a practice exam or a quiz for your students. This is a way of, number one, pushing out for you whether or not you did it right, okay? And if you did do it right, the difficulties that some of your students may find and get some feedback from them on it. Again, there are certain things that you have to do. There are certain things that the student has to do. And if they don't do some of these things, then they're going to have some issues. So making sure that they follow the primary 3 steps, okay, and I'll show you those shortly, is important. And if they still have struggles after that, the best advice that I can give is that you tell them to actually go to Proctorio support directly. And I'll show you how to do that as well. Show them how to do that. Actually, there's a little bit of that in this document too. But if you do the practice exam, obviously it will yield results, positive and negative. And then, if you check in with your students and you need some help with that, you certainly can check in with myself or NCC Ed Tech, and we'll try to help you with whatever encumbrances there were and give you some guidance. But again, rule of thumb again is if you, let's just say you have 10 students, they take the exam and 3 students end up with a grade in the grade center, okay? You can be confident that it's working, okay? If 6 students didn't take it, or 3 students took it and said, oh, hey, I wasn't able to get all the way through the exam, or something happened, or I couldn't even start the exam, most likely it's on their side, okay? And I'm giving you some numbers there. Don't automatically think that 6 out of 10 students are going to struggle with this. That's not the case that we're finding, okay? And maybe I'll ask the ladies and gents afterwards that have used it, what type of positive percentage in terms of student usage they had. There's even a document here that gives you some recommended settings, and you'll understand a little bit more about that when we get to that point. But right here is going to be your best help recommendation as well. And you can contact NCC Ed Tech and we'll get back to you and try to help you directly on the NCC side predominantly. But if you have any questions, you can access this Proctorio help once you have installed the Proctorio extension on the Chrome browser. It's important. All you have to do is actually get to this little puzzle piece at the top right of Chrome. And when you click on Proctorio, it'll bring up this pop-out, and you can either go to their live chat or to their help and support center to get some of that support. You can also email them at support@proctorio.com. So I like to make sure that people fully understand how they can get help besides just, Joe, it's not working. Okay. I hope that's helpful. All right.
Joe, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
How do we actually activate Proctorio? Do we?
That's
do
where
it
we're
through
going right now.
Blackboard?
That's where we're going right now.
Okay,
Have you
so
done a Blackboard exam, Mike?
Yeah.
Because that's
So
first.
when you have a Blackboard exam, you make that first, and then there's options in learning content to attach it to Proctorio, or do I
Okay.
need to set up a Proctorio account, or what?
No, there's no account that's needed.
Okay.
You and your students are going to be connected to Proctorio because our Proctorio course, our Blackboard courses have a tool built into them.
Yeah, I saw that on the
Allow for
Blackboard.
this communication between the Blackboard course and the Proctorio cloud, so everything can happen. Set up, examination, results, review, etc. That all has to happen with active connection to their cloud service.
So if I have an exam, how do I get Proctorio working?
Good question. Let's get there right now.
Thanks.
And for some reason, I can't find my exam. Hold on. Let me come down this way. Nope, not this one. Sorry, guys. It was right there. All right,
Joe, while you're there, Vertel has a question
sure.
on whether or not students can take a Proctorio test on their iPhone or iPad.
Okay. No, no devices. This is tough. I'm struggling so much here today. Okay, there we go. There we go. That's what I want. I gotta get it in this other mode. Come on now. There we go. Okay, so this is a practice course that we use, a demonstration course, and we're in a learning content space. Before we get there, though, I just want to mention a couple of caveats, and this is something that we'll build into that best practices guide. You'll see that your course should have, we did that in the template for every spring, fall 20 course, this Proctorio folder, okay? We suggest that you make that folder available to the students if you're using Proctorio on exams. If not, don't. So all you have to do is show that link, and then that little icon that was there went away. And now your students can actually see this folder. Because in this folder, this is the tool that has to be there in your course to make that web connection between your Blackboard course and the cloud Proctorio system. But right here, you have a whole folder that will help you and your students with information about Proctorio. So it requires Google Chrome browser. Here's how you can download Chrome if you don't already have it. This is both for you and your students. And here's how you would install the Proctorio extension to the Chrome browser. Without that extension, the tool doesn't work. You won't be able to modify your settings or add your Proctorio settings to the exam, which is why I'm telling you this first, Mike. All right, and then here's some support for test takers. So these are all web links. This web link here, in case you want to jot it down, is nothing more than getproctorio.com. Getproctorio.com. And that will take you to a site where you can add the Google Chrome extension. All right. So that said, remember that this spot here is where you and your students can find stuff. We would prefer that you do not remove this folder or this menu item, all right? We also prefer that you keep the placement of these menu items as they are. Proctorio has indicated to us that there is some relevance to the placement of these menu items as to the efficacy of the tool and the efficiency of the tool. So Course Home can be at top. Proctorio should be the second item in the menu, and then you can do anything else below the Proctorio item in the menu. All right. Now, you may or you may not want to actually put your test into this Proctorio folder. That's up to you. You can still put your test in your learning content folder. Right? And that's what we're going to do right now, or what we actually have done. So here is an exam. Mike, hopefully you know how to deploy an assessment in Blackboard like this one is here. If not, I'll go through that step. Is there anybody that doesn't know how to employ or deploy a Blackboard test? You're still muted, Mike, if you wanted to say something.
Oh, yeah, I know how to do that. I know
Okay,
how to
good.
make
So I
these.
don't have to show you how to deploy an exam. So once an exam is deployed, or in the process of deploying an exam, you have test options. Everybody know that? Okay, so we're going to access this already deployed exam, the test options for the exam right here under edit test options. Okay, another thing to be to know, it's not obvious or stated anywhere, is I'm a person that likes to use Chrome in incognito mode. It's more secure. Do not use Proctorio in incognito mode. It won't work. Okay, so that's one of the things I was stumbling around with just a moment ago, trying to get to the right course in the right mode here in Chrome. So here we are in looking at our test options. All right. One thing we don't want you to modify before, after, or during Proctorio settings is the name of the exam. Okay? If you want to modify the name of the exam, do so before you do anything with Proctorio. Another little caveat, which you're probably not going to see written in too many places yet. Okay? So if you're going to modify the exam, do so right now. Go ahead and submit, and then come back here before you do anything with Proctorio. Okay. All right. So you have all the things that you want relative to your Blackboard settings and your exam. You want it to open in a new window, make blah, 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 multiple attempts. Do not use forced completion with Proctorio. Actually, if you try, I think it overrides it, but I could be wrong about that. Just don't use it. You can have a timer, all right? You can have display options, etc. You will notice, we'll come back to that, that after we apply Proctorio, this field is going to be grayed out, but have something in it. Right? You don't want to modify that. You can have test availability options, like a student that may need double time taking a test, etc., and a due date. Right? Usually skip this self-assessment thing because we really want to have a graded assessment, and how you do your feedback and test results is entirely up to you. And last but not least, in our Blackboard settings, we have the test presentation. Now, Proctorio recommends that you leave the all at once setting on and not go to a one at a time or prohibit backtracking. But we've worked with nursing on that because they don't want that at all. Their NCLEX testing says they only get to see one question at a time, so they want to prepare their students the way to take the NCLEX. So they have used it one at a time, even though they're applying Proctorio, and haven't seen any terrible results. So buyer beware, Proctorio says don't do that, but our testing has said, okay, it seems to be okay. All right, that said,
Joe, I'm sorry. Can you just go back to, let's say I have one disabled student out of 15.
right.
And can I individualize the extension for that one student?
Right here.
Okay, gotcha. All right, I didn't see that. All right, I got you.
Yep. That's a Blackboard thing.
Okay.
Okay, so up to this point, all we've talked about is Blackboard. Okay, so now this would have been the last thing, but now what do we see here? Proctorio settings, all right? Now, for some reason, now, I didn't plan this, but for some reason, it's not giving me a checkbox to do what's called remote proctoring under the Proctorio settings. So I'm going to assume that somehow my connectivity has sort of been interrupted. All right, you may find this and your students may find this, and this is one little troubleshooting tool that we could do. So what I'm going to do, go right up here to the extension, that puzzle piece, and I'm going to confirm that Proctorio is linked up. And if you get this help mechanism, it should be linked up. So I'm not quite sure why this is happening at the moment. And I'm going to do one other thing to ensure this. I'm going to cancel this right now. And we'll come back to it. So the other thing I'm going to do is on this page, remember we had this tool over here in Proctorio, and I just kind of skipped it, all right? Well, on this page in learning content, I'm going to add this tool. I'm going to call it a safety mechanism just for purposes of ensuring that I have connectivity where I want it to be on the page that my exam is on. So here I am. I'm going to go to Tools, all right, and More Tools. Click that. And over here in the last column, we call it SEP, Secure Exam Proctor. This is a tool that Proctorio provides. So you don't need to do anything but submit that, and it's going to provide that little camera on the page. It's going to be all the way down at the bottom, of course. All right, and I'm just going to go ahead and just drag it up to the top of the page just so I can see it there. Makes it easier for you guys to see it as well. There has been some indication from Proctorio where it is on the page may matter too. There's a lot of maybes with Proctorio, I'm sorry to say. So here it is, all right? And now what you and your students can both do is you can click on this and you should get a result that the tool is successfully working here, all right? That's just sort of a confirmation that, hey, we're connected with Proctorio. So now we'll go back to the course again, go into learning content, and let's look at those test options. All right. And we're going to edit the test options. It's thinking. All right. So I'm going to assume the reason I can't see it this time is because, and I remember I said that this was sort of a practice or a demo course. We probably have students that have taken this exam. All right. That's not going to work for us when we apply Proctorio settings. So don't try to retroactively apply Proctorio to an exam that has already been taken. But I'm glad I showed you these other things because they could be part and parcel. So let's see if there's a test here in learning content that I can choose. And of course there is not. So I'm going to quickly create one and just call it P test for Proctorio. All right. And I'm going to submit that. And I'm just going to give it one question. We'll give it a
Joe, I just wanted to mention that that test was taken.
thank you. That's the reason.
Yeah, it was a practice. It was done as a practice, you know, a practice, not with Proctorio, just to check the test.
Gotcha. Thank you. And I'm just putting a couple answers in here real quick, just to create an exam. Or not that we're even going to look at this. Okay, we're going to submit that. So now we have an exam. Let's say okay, and we're going to deploy that exam. Choose it. So this is the step I skipped because everybody said they knew how to. And right away, we're going to be in the test options area while we're doing the deployment. So do everything else you want to do, make it available, blah, 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 blah. We'll go ahead and do that real quick because I might have time to actually take the exam and show you, put a timer on, blah, 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 all this other stuff. But now when we get all the way down here, voila, we have what we want. You're able to apply remote proctoring by clicking this checkbox. Clicking the checkbox is going to give you a whole nother bounty, a pirate paper towel head of stuff that's here. And this is the smorgasbord that I had mentioned. Okay, so first off, you have your recording options, and they're categorized kind of nice. But if you don't understand what this category is, look what happens when I hover over it. Okay, I get this question mark. And when I click on it, oh, here's a short video about this information of recording options. All right, hopefully good stuff for you. Just click away. And if you want to know particularly about the recording option here, the record video, record audio, click on that question mark. All right, it's either going to give you a little video, it's going to give you a little bit of text, or it's going to take you to their support site. Any one of those three things when you click on this context-sensitive help to these things. So there's no reason for me to go in depth with what you want here. But again, look at that best practices document. It talks about, especially in that first practice quiz, you know, which one of these you should probably choose in a practice quiz, because it's going to give you the best way to ensure that most of the elements that you're going to want to use in your real quiz will be tried during the practice quiz section. So each one of these things gives you and gives us a little bit more information about what's happening while the student is taking the exam. So you can record their audio, record their screen, their display, record the kind of traffic that comes through, making, you know, it'll let us know if there's any other browsers open and things like that, and to record the room. So that's your environment video that they're going to actually do for you. All right. Stop me if you need something in particular about these things. Lockdown, that's what Respondus lockdown browser did. It locked down certain things. So Proctorio has those same kind of settings, but again, it's a little bit more selective or deselective. And every time you click on one of these things, it basically is saying you're putting it on. If it's black, it's on. If it's white, it's off. And with this one, you have different levels. Okay? You can be lenient, you can be severe, you can not have it on at all. One of the things I want to mention for Dan, is that we suggest if somebody's using a screen reader, if they have an accessibility with that, not to use force full screen with your settings for that exam. If that's an important thing for everyone else besides somebody that needs a screen reader, then you probably should make 2 exams. You know, one for the student that we don't want to apply this to, and one for the other students that don't have a screen reader necessity. Okay. Only one screen, disable new tabs. Again, you can get the information about each one of these, but if anybody has a question about any one, I'll try to answer it for you right now. Okay. And then your verification options. So that's the one thing about this tool. It does allow us, as Heather and Dan were interested in, making sure that the student is somewhat identified, and as well as being in a proctored environment for integrity of the exam. Now, keep in mind, this verification is just something that you're doing. We have another tool called BioSig, which actually does legitimize their ID. All right, it goes out there and says, hey, we know for sure that this is that student. Okay, this tool does not do that, right? So it's up to you to look at their ID that they're giving you in the Proctorio gradebook when you're reviewing the exam results and say, oh, yeah, that is that person. Okay. It's up to you to do that verification. And these other verifications you can see right here. All right, the other thing it provides is 2 types of tools. This is similar to what Respondus did, but I don't think that they had a whiteboard function yet. They had been working on that, but when we were using Respondus, they didn't have a whiteboard. So for people in math, Dana, it might be helpful for them to have a scratch pad, if you will, to allow them to do some calculations. I know you said not a calculator, but maybe a scratch pad. I know that some of the faculty that are using it in certain disciplines want to see the students' work, and that whiteboard will allow for that if they're monitoring their screen. And these tools are available when the student is taking the exam. Once they get to the point of being in the question set, there will always be, they can hide it, but a little box that rolls with the exam that shows the video camera. It'll show them in the camera, and the tools and other things are available to them underneath that video camera box, including the calculator that they could turn on and turn off if you allow it, and the whiteboard they can turn on and turn off if you allow it. They also can get to Proctorio live chat from there too if a problem occurs, right? This little button that they have up here on their extension is their way to get to Proctorio live chat too, should they have an issue before, during an exam. All right, this is a summary of what you've chosen here. All right, it just tells you sort of how secure you've made this exam or not, throwing up a series of 3 shields. So we haven't really done anything. So let's record the audio and put a lenient full screen on here. Notice that certain things you click will force other things to be applied as well. Now let's look at our summary. See, our summary changed based upon the settings that we've chosen, okay? All that is a static dashboard summary. Now, another area that you can deal with if you want to, my recommendation is you just choose this recommended setting here, are the behavior. So it's gonna be watching, and it's, you know, artificial intelligence, AI is determining how much they're looking away. You know, did they get out of the screen view? Did somebody walk by? Did they hear audio from a distance? The answer to that is B. You know, whatever it may be, is the behavior settings and what it picks up. And those are the flags that you'll see on the backside when you review the Proctorio gradebook. All right, so you decide here if you want a non-customized setting for those behaviors. Recommended, lenient, moderate. If you want customized, you basically are coming down here and you're picking the metrics that it's using and deciding from how important to more important it is, low to high, on each of these metrics that it's going to be looking at. Okay, So you can do this very, very discreetly. And I don't mean like hidden, but discreetly, very, very particularly. Or you can do it just by saying, I'm just going to go with the recommended settings. Now, the reason why I'm telling you that it doesn't matter as much here is if a setting that you check here with your behavior is either too light or too strong, you can change it on the backside as you're looking at the results, okay? You can't change any of these settings later on or while the exam is been taken by somebody. When the exam is deployed and has actually been taken by somebody, you can no longer change any Proctorio settings. And you shouldn't change any Blackboard settings either. You might be able to go in and add an availability exception and possibly change a due date and things like that, but be careful what you change. Don't change that test name. All right, and here you go. So here's all those settings. And here's some other abnormalities that you can click on, click off in terms of the usage of the tool. All right. Now, if you want to, you can, if you know you're going to use the same kind of settings all the time, you can create a profile. That profile gets stored on your local computer in your local Chrome browser. So if you use that same Chrome browser, every time you do an exam, you can use that saved profile and you don't have to go through and click off all of these settings for every test that you do, right? But if you go to another computer, that profile isn't going to be there, just so you know. But you can create a profile to make this a little bit easier for you. But look at all these darn settings in Proctorio. It's kind of a good thing, but it makes it slightly more complex. And we didn't have this smorgasbord with respondents. We had a few things we could change to put on or put off. But this is really quite robust compared to respondents. Any questions about all these settings?
Joe, not a question about the settings, but Dana has a question.
Okay.
If the exam is completed in software outside of Blackboard, my understanding is you just have to insert one question in your Blackboard exam that includes the link to the software needed, i.e. Alex. Is that correct?
So that is the mechanism, Dana, that we did employ for Connect, the McGraw-Hill product. I don't know if anybody's tried it in Alex yet. So I would say that that's what we've been told in a general fashion, and we've definitely confirmed it with McGraw-Hill Connect. And we would prefer that somebody tries it and connects it and uses it with Alex, or if you want us to, we'll do some testing with that with you. Happy to check to ensure that that's the way to go. We're being told by Proctorio that they're working on more capability for third-party connections, because this is a rather quirky workaround, and I've struggled with a few faculty trying to explain to them how to go about doing it in accounting and in other business courses. So that said, we'll see if they do get to a point where they make that mechanism a little bit easier to work with. But you're
Okay.
right.
Another question.
Could I just follow up real quick? Sorry, Sandy.
Yeah,
to
no,
interrupt.
go ahead.
Would the settings then in the third-party software like Alex override the settings that you would possibly want to set up with a Proctorio?
Well, keep in mind, the Proctorio settings are sort of like a shell or an overlay, whether you're doing it through Blackboard exam or you end up using the Blackboard exam as a springboard to the exam in another platform. So whatever settings you have on that exam in Alex are going to be applied to that exam in Alex, okay, for sure. But everything proctoring wise is happening through Proctorio on the Blackboard test options for the Blackboard exam, which is only one question. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Rather interesting.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Steve has a question as well. And he wants to know, if you clear your cache in Chrome browser, does the profile go away?
Hey,
That is that's an interesting question.
I can't say for sure.
Yeah.
I think it depends. I think there's only certain things that get cleared by default when you do the general clear cache. Whether that's one of them, I don't know. But if you went in and made sure that you wiped out everything, I have a feeling it probably would go, but I don't know where exactly that's saved. It may be saved somewhere in this, you know, this mechanism in the extension here. I don't know the guts of Proctorio well enough because, you know, any extensions that you have on Chrome, which would include Proctorio, you can see some of the other ones I have. You know, there are some details here, and there might be something along with the extension particular to Proctorio that wouldn't get deleted if you clear your cache, but sorry, don't know the answer. All right, good questions though. Thank you. The one thing that people have all said regarding this tool, I wish we could take it as a student and see what it's all about, but lo and behold, you can't. So I would, in all the other things that I do with Blackboard and Sandy and Elaine, you know, we sometimes go into this student preview mode and, hey, let's look at it from a student perspective. Yeah, it's a really great tool. Not with Proctorio. You can't fool them. They know you're not a student. So unfortunate. So, you know, obviously for purposes of troubleshooting, you know, myself, Sandy, Chris, we have some student accounts and we'll go through things on your behalf for you. I mean, I gave up one of my student accounts to one person, happened to be somebody with that third party thing because they were so unsure about the fact that it would work. And I let him use my account for a day. And, you know, he went through the motions himself as a student. But unfortunately, there's no other way. So I really can't give you that perspective. Now, Chris Flynn, who is the real guru at NCC regarding Proctorio, will be with us tonight. And he promises he might show a way to do that because he has a dual OS type of situation where he uses a Mac and he can have Windows running in the Mac and he can actually do it on the Windows side and it can work for him and we can see it during a live session. But what we're working on is actually a little video of that entirety student process that we're going to try to create very soon. And when it is ready, I will throw it in here to this Proctorio Padlet for everybody. Okay, I think that will be helpful. It was actually something that was mentioned yesterday during our AOS meetings in the group that I was in. They asked if we could have a student version of video for Proctorio. So while we're talking about students, I just want to mention this here too. So a nice little test taker guide for students is right here. This is Proctorio's version of that. Also tells them, you know, what they'll be able to do, what they can't do. Tells them it works on a Mac, Windows, and they have to add the Proctorio extension to Chrome. They have to have Chrome, blah, 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 blah. So there is documentation. There's just not a video that's been set up for what it looks like as a student. And again, this is the best mechanism for the student to use to actually get help when they fumble. All right. And some will. So speaking about people who will fumble, and I wanted to address before we end, you know, Lucy, Steve, Heather, Dan, the folks that have used it, can you just quickly say, one, something about the success rate that you think you've had with it, and two, do you have any particular questions that I haven't answered for you that you were hoping to get here today?
Yes, Joe, I have a couple of questions. For the students that we had that had success on day one, when we did like practice check-in, and then test day went back and went to take the test and they either got a flashing screen or it was asking them for a password and they couldn't bypass it. Okay. Why would that be if they downloaded the extension and did not uninstall it? So again, your benchmark is if this is only happening for some students and everybody else is able to get through okay, it is at the student level. So there's where you got to be sure that they went through every step, including, remember how I had to sort of redo the secure exam Proctor? They can click, you know what, they might not be able to see this anymore. They did an update where at one point the students were able to see this and they could click on it too, but I'm not sure they do anymore. But in any case, they can come here and click here
And get this, if they're not getting this, then we recommend that they reach out to Proctorio via support@proctorio.com, or if they're willing to go here to the puzzle piece and say, hey, I'm going to remove it and reinstall it. And then they'll probably get a live connection again. Now, I've heard some students, especially in nursing, where they've done it enough times, they've seen it, that if it fails once, oh, I'm just going to try it again. This is a good thing, actually, because it's all about connectivity. And we can't say why the connectivity gets broken sometimes. It may be intermittent, or it may be that something has to happen, like recreate the Proctorio extension. So if they go out and go back in, they might be able to get past that password page. That password page is exactly the location where you're being passed from Blackboard to Proctorio. Okay, that's why they get stuck there. If that linkage isn't there, connectivity-wise, it freezes them on that password page. But by no means are you, the instructor, providing a password. Proctorio is. Remember, we did that on the exam. Where's that exam? Here it is, right? So we'll go back to those test options, and we'll notice that one, we'll go all the way down to the bottom. Here are all my Proctorio settings, right? But going up to, remember what I said about the password? Look, it's grayed out and there's some dots in here now. So that's Proctorio's way of ensuring that someone can't get to a test by just going in Blackboard. So what's going to happen is when Blackboard asks for a password, it's going to supply this encrypted password to Proctorio, enabling them to make the connection with Proctorio, and then the Proctorio layer or shell is invoked. They have to answer questions, they have to show their environment, blah, 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 and then they finally get to the exam. Good question. I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, it ended up being about, I don't know, 30% of our students couldn't get back in.
Okay.
And they were seeing the with some of our IT guys, they said if they do not see that Proctorio like camera thing, then they're connected. If they do see it, they're not. And those students were seeing it. So I said, click on it. I was telling them to click on that. And then
what?
But they were getting that flash screen then. So, and I did have to log out and back in, and that didn't work either. So to me, I think it's just, they just have poor connection maybe.
Yeah, it can well be, and it can happen before, it can happen during. Again, the best way is to get them to actually be handled directly by Proctorio support. They can do it quickly. They're there 24/7. You know, you might reach out to us, but we might not be able to respond right away, whatever. So this Proctorio help is really the lifeline.
Yeah, we try to not have, these people are, a lot of them are technology challenged, so we try not to have them contact people. So if worse comes to worse, we just keep them in the collaborate room and we monitor them, we watch them, you know, that way if all else fails. But I did have one more question. Just about the, when you go into the test and look at, you know, you can look at their pictures, you can look at their video. Is there a way to be able to see their signature? I have not been able to find it because a lot of times we have them signed. So I was just curious if there's a way to pull a report with signatures. I don't know if you can or cannot do that. Okay.
I don't know the answer to that. I'm going to have to ask. I will double check and get back to you on that. This is where you would get the Proctorio gradebook, but unfortunately we don't have anything here where a student has taken an exam. So let me see if I can, you know, close your eyes, bring up somebody's real course and try to find something for us.
If you can't, Joe, and I'm able to share screen, I probably can pull it up. I have
All right,
some.
would you mind doing that real quick?
No, hold on, let me log in.
All right, I'll stop sharing for now.
Actually, I'm on now if you want me to.
Okay, go ahead. One of you bring something up and show us how that gradebook works. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Probably won't be able to share your screen.
There you go. Okay, so here we are. So what happened was, this is Lucy? No, yes, this is Lucy. She has clicked on that View Proctorio Gradebook in the column in the Grade Center for Blackboard. And this is what you get, a dashboard of the Proctorio exam results. So at any point, you can click on a person and it shows the video and whatever else you asked for, okay? So on the right-hand side, Lucy did ask for the display or their panel to be monitored. So that's basically showing that. And there's a play button and you can actually, it goes through on a faster speed, shows you now he's doing the environment scan and blah, 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 blah. Shows you everything that's happening and you can watch this completely if you want to, all right? But let's just pause that. But you see the yellow and red items kind of indicate places that you might want to focus on as to where the student might have been flagged, all right? Again, keep in mind, those flags are based upon your behavior settings. You can make them lenient or stringent, right? So this is the dashboard. If you scroll down, let's just show them the rest of that. You'll see some information about the attempt itself. You'll see information about certain things that happen. Notice the color coding that is along with the information, kind of giving you some ideas. So there's a lot of information that is given here as you review these settings for each student. Pretty kind of cool. And you can see over on the right, show details. So it gives you an explanation about that, right? Okay. Again, they're using metrics and algorithms in artificial intelligence to do all this. So that really emphasizes why this is a guide, okay? It's not something you can rely on. They're computer algorithms. You need to look at it and then, you know, make a call yourself whether you think there's something that you need to act or react further on. And
Joe, the one thing that helps us a lot is that it pings their location. So we can see where they were when they were taking the test, which also helps us verify that they are where they are and who they are.
Hopefully, yeah. Now that also has a certain percentage of accuracy, Heather, so don't fully rely on that. In some cases, one of the things that, that Proctorio will flag if you use that button is whether or not there was collusion. And the way it talks about collusion is it sees the same or similar IP address for people. Well, some IP addresses are not very discrete. In other words, they could be for a group of people in a particular location, in a building, or something like that. For instance, for anybody here at NCC, they're not going to have a discrete IP address because we have a firewall and everybody's going to get the same IP address at NCC. So you got to be careful about how you rely on that. In a fully remote situation like yours, Heather, it's probably pretty good, right? Just keep that in mind. Scroll up a little bit again for me. I think this is Lucy, right? Yeah, back up to the top. I want you to see the tabs there. So remember we talked about changing the settings. There you go. So if you want to change that behavior setting, just make it lenient instead. Would you, up at the top, Lucy? We'll make it lenient. We'll go back to the Proctorio Gradebook tab. And look what happens right away. Go back to that person and review that person. First one, I think. Oh, no, it was that one. You're right. Look what happens. The yellow and the red has sort of gone away simply because we made those flags more lenient. All right. So it helps you decide, you know, how much you think you have to look at, you know, if you really want to be strict. But again, you're going to get a feel for that the more you review some of this stuff, how strict or lenient you want those flags to be. But I want you to realize that you could change it on the back side and it doesn't change any of the information that has been collected. It just changes the flagging level. Okay? Any other last minute thoughts, comments, or questions that we can offer? I hope this has been helpful. All right. Yeah, we've gone way over time and I appreciate your attendance and your—
Joe, appreciate you. Absolutely.
Okay. And if you have any follow-up, you know, please feel free to email NCC Ed Tech. reach out to me directly, and I will email every one of you with that Padlet resource, even though I put it in the chat. Hopefully you picked up on it, but I'll email and follow up. Thanks. And if you think of anything else, feel free to throw that into a message to me or to us, and we'll be sure to address it if we didn't address it for you today. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Joe.
We'll
Thank
stop
you.
the recording, and I hope that you have a good rest of the day.
You as well.
Thanks.